There's a pasuk in the parsha we just learned, Parshas Nishvotim. Lo sissa shema shov. One shouldn't carry a false information, witness, information. And one of the pshatim in Chazal is that this is azhora, this is an issur for a dayan to listen to one opinion before the other opinion. It means if someone comes to him and have a din Torah, have a claim against someone else, and the dayan says, what's the story, what's it all about? And he listens to the story from one side before he's heard the other side. Right?
Does it mean they're not allowed to hear anything about what's going on?
Nothing at all. The Rav, if someone comes to the Rav and tells him, I have a mishpah, he says, well, I'll wait till tomorrow till we're both standing here, and then I'll listen to both studies. And it goes so far that there's a Loshna Chazal, that a person who comes to the Rav, before he even tells him that he wants to have a din Torah, he explains the story that happened. I had a problem with my neighbor, we had the heat and hair or partner, and he starts telling him the story. The Gemara calls him a Rosh Orim. A Rosh who's using Chochmah, is using tricks to catch the Rav. Once the Rav has heard one side of the discussion, then he's posted as a Hadayan in that mishput. And the Rambam explains the reason is as follows. Because once he's heard the story from one side, of course the one who's putting down the story will use the description the way it's better for him, it's in his favor. And once he's heard that side of the story, it's impossible for him to hear with realistically to hear the second side of the story at all, the second opinion, because we'll discuss it why. But once he's heard, he's put into his mind the idea of the story, he heard it the way it was described by one side, he can't understand the second side completely.
But in the Beis Din you also hear first one and then the second one.
True.
The Beis Din you also hear one second one.
So the Rambam said the chiddush of this halacha is that even though he knows himself as a second opinion, when he hears from one side, he knows second opinion. As you mentioned correctly, there's always in Beis Din he's got to hear two together. But if he's listening to one side first, he's automatically biased to that side. But even though the person didn't add any sort of money or anything like that yet, he just heard one side, automatically his mind is biased to what he's heard. And the reason is,
in the Beis Din you also hear one side first.
The difference is that in Beis Din, as he's hearing the first opinion, he knows the second opinion coming already now. So he's automatically waiting to hear the second opinion as he's hearing the first one. And the reason is, Loshna Gemara is in other places, Ovid inish lachzuke dibure. A person is prone to, how is chzuke? To feststellen, no? Sorry?
In English is schwer zu sagen.
Yeah, feststellen. Ovid inish lachzuke dibure. A person would like to always make sure that his words are standing, will stay enforced. Yeah. He doesn't want to change his mind at all. And even though he could know clearly that he's made a mistake, that means to say he's standing in front of the two sides of the case the next day, and he knows he's biased to one side, but since his opinion has been fixed in a certain way, it's almost impossible for him to change later his ideas. The halacha goes so weit like this: if you have the din is if you have three eidim that come together.
About the eight or about the person involved?
The dayan.
Yeah.
Similarly, we find the Gabe Eidim. If you have three witnesses came together to say certain ages, and they gave, and one of them was found to be a shakran, one of them was a sheker. So the halach is that since you have, even though two Eidim are kosher on their own, but if you have three and one of them is apostle, so the other two also are cancelled out, right? The whole group is cancelled. And the next day, these two, they are kosher, not the apostle, kosher, want to come alone and be made together again, either on the same case or another case. Let's say the same case again. And they say we're coming as a new Eidus without the third one. So Chazal say that's no good anymore. We can't listen to them anymore because for the same reason, they're 100% kosher, but once they've given their opinion together with the Eid Apostle in a way that they've not been believed, so it doesn't help later to find any other way of putting it down, the same story, because at the end of the day, they'll come back to the same opinions they had before. We find in the Gemara says in Eruvin that there's a machloikis, whenever there's a machloikis b'Shamai and b'Hillel, halacha is b'Hillel, right? So when they have machloikis and b'Shamai and b'Hillel, the Gemara says the reason is because b'Hillel had a wonderful midah of always listening to the opinion of b'Shamai first, reconsidering it, get over, and then they said their own opinion. It's Pashtus Lem, when you see that Gemara, it seems to be that since they were such edle people, that's such a midah vanova, that's why the halacha was accepted by them. Their side is accepted as halacha, but I saw from Chaim Shmulevich explains it's deeper than that. because the fact that they had this midah of being able to consider the other opinion first, that means their own opinion is not biased anymore, because they're genuinely listening to the other side first, and they've taken into consideration all the sodom, all the svaras of the Shammai, and it could be Shammai is correct. And Afal became, then they chewed it over and thought it over, considered everything, and then they came up with their own opinion. Is automatically their opinion is more emistic. There's much more emis in it, much more correct, because it's not just a biased opinion of what we think. They've considered, they've listened, they've accepted everyone else's side, and Afal became, they came with their shitta. So halacha ke Beis Hillel b'chol mokim is because Beis Hillel is more calculated cheshbon. Beis Hillel is something which is taken into consideration all the other stodim, all the other possibilities, and still they came up with their halacha. That's why the reason why Chazal b'kaveh halacha ke Beis Hillel is more than Chazal. There was a basker that went out at one time and said that whenever there's machlokes b'sham Beis Hillel is halacha ke Beis Hillel.
Nearly.
Sorry?
Nearly all.
Nearly all, except for those few Mishnayos and Idiots, which is exceptions. Yeah. Is this midah? What lies behind this is the fact that a person is biased to what he's originally thought of, his hashkaf rishon, they call it in Ashna Kodesh, his first opinion. And I think I've said over once before, there was one famous commander in the American army, that whenever we was trying to plan out a strategic attack of some sort, had to something planned, I think it was in the Vietnam War, whenever it had to be planned out, so of course he sits down with other officers and discuss everything, and he used to say, I've made up my mind, don't mix me up with the facts. He's made up my mind. It means his first opinion stayed by him, there's nothing to change anymore. Okay, he was probably a clever man as well, and he knew what he was talking about. But the pshat of that person, by day-to-day life we see is continuous, and it causes very many arguments which start off from the fact that a person has established by himself a certain outlook on another person, or on certain in what happened, a certain story that happened, and to change it is almost impossible. He can continue finding all sorts of excuses to push up any other possibility in order to keep his own opinion straight.
You want to say that when two people are learning, and one says an opinion, that's not yet his final opinion. That's why they're learning together b'chavus in order to develop an opinion.
Okay, but chavus is usually...
It's in the meantime opinion.
Yeah.
No, because you say, I scope for a shine.
A good chavus is always intended to say his own Torah to hear what the other one has to say, and working it out, of course. It's not sure he decides that way. We find an interesting story. You see how far this midah goes, of a person not being able to admit to his mistakes and to change his mind. In Sefer Yirmiyah, there was a Novi Sheker, a false Novi, was called Hanani ben Ozel. And this Hanani ben Ozel, at one time, the Yirmiyah said to him in Vias that he's going to die this year, before Rosh Hashanah he's going to die. That was the klal he gave him. And Kachav on Erev Rosh Hashanah he dies. On Erev Rosh Hashanah he dies. So the Chazal tells us from learning from the Psukim that he asked his family to hide the fact that he died till after Rosh Hashanah. Why? Because if they get to know before Rosh Hashanah, they would see that Yirmiyah was correct. So he's talking about here after this person is already dead, and he's still concerned that he shouldn't have to come into such a matzah where they realize he made a mistake. So he's told them, make sure that you keep it secret till after Rosh Hashanah. Kilu, he died the next year, in order that Novi shouldn't be correct. Whether he is correct, we find it last his parsha as well. I just realized 2 weeks ago, when Moshe Rabbeinu said about Makas B'choros, Kachatzois halaylo, around midnight. Rashi, why around midnight? Kachatzois, it doesn't mean midnight, it means around. In case the Mitzrayim would have a mistake on their clock, and they would see it looks like 1 minute past 12 to them, and say Moshe Badoi, Moshe L'Shakar. We're talking about here that to the millimeter, exactly what Moshe Rabbeinu said happened, and all the B'chorim died. But if it's by half a second, not exactly as much, the whole thing is a waste of time. So it's not true. It's all a sheker. Because Pari and Mitzrayim were convinced that they were correct, so they find the slightest fault in Moshe Rabbeinu's words, then it'd be ogefreting ganz. And once with a similar story, you see how far the extreme person can go not have to change his mind. There was a certain shtetl where there was this, they call the Musa, right? There was a person who was always reporting things that were not good, always reporting to the police, sort of things. It's called, the state used to have what's called a Musa. There was one state that they're always having problems with this fellow. He was always reporting Zachen. No one wanted to stand within his, to be in the same room as him. And when he died, he left in his will that there's a certain thing called a kuras chamoy, that means to bury a person who was lying down, right? There's such a thing as burying standing upright, put the whole coffin standing upright, which is open from bezoin. It's a very bad way of covering someone. So he wrote this tzavor as follows. He says, listen, I've caused a lot of trouble for this town, and I feel I'm going away from this world. I want to have a shtick like a paras avoinus. He said, I'd like you to bury me standing upright. So that was his request. So when they found it after he died, they found this paper, and there was a discussion in the Bezdin whether such a thing can be done. So the Rav decided no such thing. You can't change halacha. Halacha is the kura has to be done lying down, and there's no such thing whether he does or doesn't want it. It's not up to him. We're not going to do this. So they gave him a normal kura, a normal kura. A few days later, the police walked into the Beis Hamikdash in the middle of davening, called out the Gabba and the Rav, and they called them around to the Beis HaKvaros, called them around to the gravesite, and they said, open up this cave of the person who recently buried here, and they opened it up, and he is lying like everyone else. So the police apologized, sorry, it's okay, we didn't mean that. What happened here? He said, a few weeks ago, a couple of weeks, he came to us and he said to the police, as you'll see, the Jews hate me. When I die, they'll bury me different to everyone else. They'll bury me standing upright. That's the same. And that's where it was kedai for him to write in his tzavor such a thing in order to catch out that even after his death, he should cause trouble for the Yidden. You see how difficult it is for a person to be able to say, I've made a mistake. There's a Gemara it's not really a Gemara Soita, it's a Mishnayos Soita. And the Mishnayos talk about the Isha Soita, right? A woman who has been accused of idolatry, of running off with another man. And the Mishnayos discuss like this, that the system of Soita is that she has to drink a certain water, and then she dies in Mishta Mishuna. If she's moida, she admits beforehand, then she won't be punished by Bezdin because there's no edim. On the other hand, she won't drink either, which is a mile for Bezdin. They prefer it before, it's actually because you have to raise a parasha from the Torah in the water. So they prefer that she would admit, and the Mishayos explain all sorts of difficulties they make for her, that she should be worn out and say, I can't be bothered. Okay, you know what? I didn't have it. The shul should be moida. And this woman knows that Be'etzim her end is near, right? She knows that if she's going to drink, she had it. When Afar became a fine from the Mishnah, it's very difficult for me to extract from her an admission. Even though it won't mean anything, it won't cause very much harm. She'll be better off than otherwise. If she drinks, she'll die, and like this, she'll stay alive. But Afar became, in order to say, yes, I made a mistake, that's almost impossible. And that's also we find, as so zugestellt, by Yisroi. Rashi says that Yisroi, when Moshe Rabbeinu explained Yisroi, all the different punishments that Hashem made to the Mitzrayim, so Yisroi got all tensed up from this. And Rashi said, because even though it was a ger, 10 generations further, a ger still feels for his original where he comes from. He feels for the goyim still. So we see here that even a ger who's decided already that he's decided to become a Yidden, he's gone past the whole thing of the whole procedure of becoming a ger. Afar became in his neshama, he still feels they are right. Where I came from is correct. And to work out from himself can take generations till he can change the feeling that what the life I've been living till now is incorrect.
But there's a reason why people deny the truth.
Oh.
Because if they admit the truth, then we can seduce teen. They get a very bad name. It's not. I saw something in the paper last night. Somebody was accused of something. He said, "Yeah, ich bin nicht kein Malach, ich bin auch ein Mensch." So he admitted he admitted it. But so others will say, "Yeah, but in your position, you should never have done what you did." Okay.
Sometimes it's not always a sin. Sometimes it's an opinion of a second person.
By admitting a sin, people make it worse for themselves.
Yeah, but it's not always an admitting sin. We're talking about an opinion. Opinion you have a certain person. The first sight of you see, the first impression of a certain person you see as a shlemazel, right? And I can say you'll find all sorts of excuses not to have to change your opinion, even though it's not talking about an effect to you personally. It's an outlook on everything that we'll understand a bit further soon. I just want to say another moshel where we find it. There was the Chazal explained the story that happened when Yeshua captured Yericho, and he made a klol. Yericho was destroyed at the time. He said, "Whoever rebuilds Yericho, we lose his children." And years later, someone called Chiel decided to rebuild Yericho. And as he started building, his first son died, and he continued with another son. I think he had 10 children. And when he finished, the doors of the gates of the town, his last son had died. And now he knew what Klala was. He wasn't stupid. He knew exactly what was going on here. And he knew that what was happening, and he saw the kiyum of the nevuah happening. And after he continued, it didn't make any difference to him. So he lost all his children. Apart from the akshonas we find in that, but we see again the point that even though he sees clearly, black and white, that he's making a mistake, but to stop and say he's made a mistake is too difficult. Let me say like this. I once heard, Rabbi Zorach Grynhaus, the name means something, Rabbi Zorach Grynhaus, Dr. Rabbi Rom. Mm-hmm. He said once a very interesting statement, and we find it the truth. He said there's three things a person needs to be able to survive. A person needs food. He needs to be able to survive in a normal, he needs to have clothes. And the third thing he said is you need to have something to put the blame on. That means to say, a person has to be able to wake up and say he has headache, the weather's not good, this one's fault, that one's fault, I can't bother. And he said, explain the reason is because if a person would take all the blame on himself, everything that goes wrong, which involves himself, he is stuck in a certain way guilty, he can't survive. A person can't survive that way. So there's a certain necessity in this what we're talking about. The person has to be able to think to himself, this is their fault, I went to bed too late, and this one disturbed me, and this one trapped me, and the weather's not good, all the rest of it. He has to be able to find excuses or to put the blame on a certain thing, on a certain happening, on a certain person, in order to survive in his own, should feel normal, right? So mitzad echad, it's not completely incorrect. A person needs this to be able to survive, and to be able to live normally and to feel confident, to feel happy with himself. But where to draw the line? That's the chokhmah, right? So when it comes to a certain place, when it affects, I once heard a vertel that everyone has mishigasim, right? Everyone has his own mishigasim. Mishigas the way he wants to sleep, the way he likes his food, his clothes, you name it. Everyone's mishigasim. So if everyone's mishigasim, who's a meshugana over there? Which person is called a meshugana? So I once heard a vertel like this: everyone has mishigasim. As long as it only affects yourself, that's okay. As soon as mishigasim affects other people, then he's already meshugana. If he does things that disturbs other people, it's similarly like this. With this idea of a person staying with his biased opinion, is as long as it's only for himself, to make himself comfortable, it's entitled. But as soon as it affects other people, that means his opinion is on someone else. And because of that, well, like we said with the dying, because of that he'll paskin incorrectly, and we're all a dying. As we go along the day, we're paskin the whole time to ourselves, our opinion on this one and that one, and what should be said and what shouldn't be said, and how we should react. It's also a person's a dying for himself continues paskening. So when it's negate himself, whether he should get up in the morning, shouldn't get up, or how he should have his food, he's in diet. He can have his old opinion as long as he likes. He doesn't like avocado, he can stay there the whole life, doesn't disturb anyone. But as soon as it comes to affecting someone else, that's when it has to be taken into consideration. The Moshe we find by Yitzchak. Yitzchak went through most of his life believing that Esav was the one that should have all the blessings. And Yaakov, the Svarim say Yaakov should be supported by Esav. That was Yitzchak's idea. He was assuming that Esav would earn all the money, and he'd support Yaakov and continue the day so that there'd be a working class and be the learning class, and Esav would be the working class supporting Yaakov. Now Rivka, however, saw the truth, and she saw further than that, and she saw that Esav was a Rasha, and if Esav whatever he'd get would keep for himself, he would never in any way help Yaakov. So she put an end to this, put a stop to this. And Yitzchak, when he got to the realization of what happened, so he suddenly chapped that he'd been, if Hashem wanted that way that the bracha should go to Yaakov, that means that his belief and his idea that he had the whole life was incorrect. Esav was not the one that was meant to get the brachas and get the blessings. So the pasuk says, "Vayechad charada gedola ad ba'od." He got a terrible fright, terrible shock. And in Yalkut Shimon it says that Vashasi was at the Akedah, and was tied onto the Mizbech, and was about to be slaughtered. He also got a shock at the time. But the Chazal say that this shock, charada gedola ma'od, was bigger than anything he had in his life. The fright that he had made a mistake, was shocking for him. So here we see that Yitzchak is the other extreme. Yitzchak, he'd be going a whole life with a certain belief of if he suddenly realized he's gone wrong, so he has charot, he admitted it. Okay, the Gambar here, that Yaakov should keep the brachas. I heard once, I think I heard from Entroy, that when he was a young boch or young man, so his grandfather was Master Shiva, Rav Segel. Rav Segel had very many hanhogas and chumras, all sorts. His whole life was all sorts of inyanim and minhagim of his own chumras. And I don't know if it was by himself or someone else pointed out to him that a certain hanhogi had, I think, been a get until Sedayim. A certain halach he was keeping was a mishabura, slightly different. It changed slightly. He was a man of 80 years old, and he'd been going a whole life with his chumrah. And he said, "Let me check it out." We checked it out. He said, "You're right. From today onwards, I'll change. Correct." This is like regardless for a person who would be living he wasn't living a hefker. Everything he had done was calculated, and he could get to a certain stage after being 80 years old. He's correct. I'll change my way. Change. This is the godless from the Adam Godel. One stage further, when that will finish, we find. I once heard from Rav Schlesinger from Monsi. It's rolled over. The name is Schlesinger. That we find that the whole Yesod of Yehudi from Yisrael is also connected to this point. There's a pasuk by the brachas that Yaakov gave to Yehuda. Ato Yeducha steht im pasuk. Ato Yeducha V'shtachol v'emnechem. Ato Yeducha steht in Targum like this. That since you admitted and you were not ashamed. Therefore, Boch Yeducha Nachecho, and there's Lashon Targum that Yehudim are called Yehudoim because of that. The Shem Yehudoi, why Yidden are called Yehudim, comes from the name Yehuda. And Yehuda comes from the name the word Moide because he admitted. Now, what was the story where he admitted? He brings out very, very strongly how was the Koich of Yehuda. The story was as follows. When Yehuda had this 3 boys, right? Er, V'oinon V'shelo, and Tamar married the first and then the second son of his, and they both died. And she wanted to then marry the third one, the Shelah. And Yehuda says, was scared, and therefore he said to wait till the Shelah grows up. We'll talk about it. She got a bit older, and Yitama saw there's nothing happening, so she somehow managed to persuade that Yehuda should marry her in a legal way, should we say. Later on she became pregnant, and Yehuda was, they took her to Mishpat, and Yehuda was the dye at the time. On the Medrash state that in the Bezdin there was Yaakov Avinu and Yitzchok were still alive. So this is the Medrash. They were both there in the base Mishpat.
2 brothers?
I don't know if they were Dayonim or not. I'm not sure. They were there at the time. I'm not sure if they were Dayonim, father and son, but it's possibly Dayonim. And Yehuda got to hear, as we know through the Simonim that Thomas gave him, that she's pregnant from him. Now, the easiest thing Yehuda could have done was to say, listen here, I've just got a piece of information that changes the outlook of the whole case. We'll draw the case at the moment, we'll carry on, continue tomorrow. That would have been the easiest thing for him. He could have said to him, listen, we'll carry on tomorrow, and then overnight just saw, it's nothing, we've discovered that it's not Thomas' fault at all, and it's all over. And he could never have to be moida berabim in such a difficult way that he is at fault. When Afal became Yehuda decided that he said to him, Tzot komi many, I'm at fault. Well, this is the koyach of Yehuda that he put in the Klal Yisrael, such a possibility of, in the most difficult situation, to admit that, to say, sorry, I'm at fault, it's my fault. And because of that, Yehudim are called Yehudim, because they have to have that middah, or Klal Yisrael have to have that middah, to be able to moed al emes, say, yeah, I made a mistake to now. It's choice from the Targum, that, as we said, when it's concerning other people, this middah of being able to moed al emes and to admit that I made a mistake and have to change my ways, that's a yesod for Yiddishkeit, a yesod for Yehudim generally, and I think we have to work on. You can start off with small things at home. Sometimes this one's fault, that one's fault, and if you think a bit further, you're yourself at fault. And if a person starts off with small things and it gets to larger things, it's easier. We should help and tackle. We should be able to be moed al emes whenever it's necessary.